Welcome everyone, I'm Adeshawa Josh and this is Africa Matters. This week, the world ended up watching even more state television, this time courtesy of the Central African country of Gabon.
Il est porté à la connaissance de la communauté.
Gabon became the latest nation to get new leaders dressed in military fatigues. They follow in the footsteps of Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso and Guinea. So, the question is, are coups becoming the new trend in Africa? There's been yet another mutiny in Africa, this time in Gabon. The Central African country is the sixth country to topple its government since 2020. In the early hours of August 30th, Gabon's military announced it had seized power just hours after President Ali Bongo Ondimba was declared winner of a controversial election that would have secured his third term in office. The soldiers said the country faced a severe institutional, political, economic, and also social crisis, and then declared the results of the polls null and void. Hours later, the military leaders named General Brice Oligui Nguema, Commander-in-Chief of the Gabonese Republican Guard, as the country's transition leader. France, the United States, and the EU have all condemned the coup. The African Union has also called on security forces in Gabon to peacefully return to democratic constitutional order. But thousands of people took to the streets of the capital Libreville to celebrate the junta.
It's the liberation of an entire country, something I've dreamed about, something I've seen in the West, which is now a reality for us Gabonese. We are proud and very happy that the army has decided to stand up for justice, and we give glory to God for that. In Gabon there is a God, and this God has answered our prayer.
We're happy. We want change in this country. We don't want to be bullied anymore. We don't want to be enslaved. That's all I want to say. I'm 100% Gabonese.
So, why are Gabonese people demanding change? And why are more African countries resorting to military coups in an attempt to fix their country's challenges? Let's take a closer look. In the last 2 years alone, the wave of military-led states has spread from coast to coast, stretching from Guinea on the Atlantic coast to Sudan, which borders the Red Sea. Except for Sudan, all the countries that have experienced a coup recently are former French colonies. But Gabon is the first Central African country to have a coup, ending the rule of President Ali Bongo's family that has ruled the country for more than 5 decades. Let's hear more from Michael Amoa. He is an Africa analyst and a senior visiting fellow at London School of Economics. He joins me from London. Thank you so much for making it to our program. The coup in Gabon happened straight after an election. Does this mean that democracy is no longer working?
Actually, it means that democracy is working because citizens of Gabon have taken it upon themselves to challenge what they've seen as a defrauded election and have managed to actually overthrow the regime that wants to impose defrauded results onto them.
What you just said just legitimized the coup. The military intervened and took down, well, what is supposedly a democratically elected government. Yes, we do know that it was a disputed election, but it wasn't the people that took down the government, it was the military.
Well, the military are also citizens. What's interesting, though, is actually that there have been so many democratic coups occurring on the continent. When I talk about democratic coup, I mean where the sitting head of state somehow manages to revise the constitution to extend their maximum presidential term beyond 2 and stay in power for so long. So we've had even the very Gabon, the former president Omar Bongo was in power for 42 years. We have Congo-Brazzaville, the president, 40 years and still counting. Cameroon, 41 years, 38 years in Togo, 33 years in Ivory Coast, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. And these are democratic coups that have really undermined democracy in Africa. And it looks like perhaps some of the military coups are trying to rectify this anomaly.
That's an interesting point you just made, because there are people who would say that the military is trained to defend. They're not very great at developing, which is why people would say that their job is to defend the country and not necessarily to develop it. Are you saying there's a silver lining here?
Well, defending the state or the country includes defending democracy. So, and that's why military regimes are not expected to stay in power for too long. They are meant to be transitional regimes, and then organize proper elections for, ensure the independence of the Electoral Commission, and then ensure new and proper elections to take place.
Would you then say that coups are becoming the new trend in Africa? And basically, what is the driving force behind the rising number of coups across the continent?
Well, this is where we have to unpack the whole thing.
Let's do it.
The contagion of coups currently across the Sahel's part of West Africa, and particularly in the Francophone countries, is actually what I would call a Francophone spring. Just as we had the Arab Spring, now we have a Francophone spring, and the domino effect of coups, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and now Gabon. We also had the independence wave of Africa in the 1960s, and this appears to be what I would call as the second wave of independence across Francophone Africa. And we see the development of perhaps France-Afrique unraveling. And this is not where it stops. We analysts think that this is going to carry on, and there may be more coups before the year ends or in the next 18 months.
It's quite interesting you mention all of these points, Michael, because it is indeed true that the common denominator of all of these coups is France, to be honest. But you see, this Gabon sets a new precedence because it's in Central Africa. We've had the past couple of years as being across the Sahel, right? And we're hearing reports of how that's been unsettling for former French colonies in the region in Central Africa. So some of the military regimes have cited French neocolonialism, basically. And would you say it is a break from the past in terms of France-Africa relations, politically and economically?
Definitely, this is a break of the past, and as I said, this is a developing story about the unraveling of France-Afrique, and Francophone African countries wanting to break from the past. And that's why we see that usually soon after the coups, among the first announcements would be breaking away from the existing deals, existing economic deals, existing military pacts that are part of the arrangement of the neo-colonial system which France imposed on its former colonies after independence. And then following from that is what you get as asking the French bases to leave, because in almost all of these countries, France has military bases. And the agreement was actually that if the head of state is in trouble, if there's a coup, for example, the French special forces would go and stop the coup. And actually, because of that, most of these Francophone heads of states have the impunity to stay in power for so long and mismanage the country. And because they know very well that any attempt to overthrow them will be defeated by the French special forces and the French military bases on the ground. Michael. And so what we're seeing actually is a developing story of citizens in Francophone African countries taking it upon themselves to unravel the neo-colonial arrangement that has been in place for so long.
Michael, a very strong point you made, an unraveling of French legacy across its former colonies in Africa. This is a story we're going to keep an eye on, very much so, on Africa Matters and, of course, on TRT World. Thank you so much, Michael Amoa, an Africa analyst and a senior visiting fellow at London School of Economics. Thank you for speaking at Africa Matters.
Thank you, too.
It's been 4 years since the coup deposed Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir, and now the country is nominally led by a body known as the Transitional Sovereignty Council. Its chairperson is General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the head of the army whose forces have been fighting the RSF paramilitary since April. Wasim Essasolu reports on the growing humanitarian crisis there.
Zahir Ali was lucky to get out of Khartoum alive. He suffered a spinal injury when his house was bombed.
I arrived in Port Sudan about 2 months ago. I don't have relatives here. I have a problem in walking, standing and even sitting. I am being transferred from a hospital to another one as I need a certain type of radiography. But so far I couldn't get that done.
Port Sudan has become a common destination for the displaced, and shelters like these are popping up around the city. Abdullah Shamal found shelter inside this building, which also serves as a home for 400 others. But he says the provisions are never enough.
I ask NGOs to provide us with minimum necessities of life, food, water, beds, and what a human being needs to live. I am one of the people who can't sleep at night. I put a wet scarf over my face and can only sleep when it overwhelms me. I sleep for 5 minutes, then wake up again when the scarf dries up.
The fighting in Sudan between the army and a rival military group is mainly taking place in Khartoum and the Darfur region. The UN estimates that 4.7 million people have fled their homes. And as the conflict goes on, more people will look for safety. Wasim Essasolu, Africa Matters.
We have more stories coming up for you here on Africa Matters, including
Aman Masharia from Nairobi, where a remarkable tale of transformation is underway. Meet Paul Waweru, a high school physics teacher, as he powers the future of Kenya's cities with discarded laptop batteries.
And I am Hilary Noroka, and I'll tell you about the young Nigerian who goes around cleaning public places like this market for free.
In a world where innovation is slowly meeting sustainability, a physics teacher in Kenya has been shaping the landscape of urban mobility and steering cities towards a greener and more eco-conscious future, one discarded laptop battery at a time.
Meet Paul Waweru, a Kenyan high school physics teacher who is about to lead Nairobi into a greener future in an unexpected and creative way. Paul's journey begins in the bustling markets of Nairobi as he scores through discarded laptop batteries, each one acquired for less than $1. Amongst the piles of electronic waste, Paul sees beyond the discarded pieces, recognizing the untapped potential within each battery. With precision and skill, he demonstrates the intricate process of dismantling these batteries, a process that has laid the foundation of his revolutionary venture.
The challenge started when I bought an e-bike from China. It came with battery technologies known as lead acid. Barely 7 months down the line, the batteries were no longer working. They were all swollen. Then the capacity dwindled. So I sat down and thought, with my physics and my research, how can I, overcome this challenge? Through a Facebook post, I saw somebody in Nairobi who was selling old laptop batteries. I had previously experimented with old laptop batteries. I was trying to make power banks. I had managed to make power banks for charging phones. But then I thought, why not try this on an e-mobility vehicle?
Fueled by his personal disappointment and unyielding curiosity, Paul began installing innovative battery configurations onto recycled electric bike frames. This marked the birth of his company, Ecomobilas.
When an old laptop battery stops functioning, it doesn't matter that, it doesn't really mean that the cells inside have all gone bad. Probably it's the charging system. Somebody probably was playing games while the charge is still on, and then the charging system was overwhelmed, and probably the BMS stopped working. For us, we're interested in the cells. We recoup them. We then make new battery packs. We add our own BMSs. These bikes require BMS so that it can constantly be monitoring the battery so that it can remain in good health at all times so that it's not overcharged or undercharged.
and Paul envisions an even greater change for his community.
When you talk about use of electric mobility, it talks volumes because it eliminates the problem of carbon fuel waste, which comes from the fuel. Every liter of petrol that you use will normally generate about 3 kilograms plus of carbon every time when you are running that. So when you look at the volumes of the number of motorcycles, 2 million motorcycles running in our country, and you're talking about each of them consuming, say, around 4 or 5 liters a day, you're talking about each generating close to almost 20 kilograms of carbon dioxide, which goes to the environment every day.
Gitau, an advocate for sustainable mobility, has now joined others who commute to work on an Ecomobilas bike.
Ecomobilas is rewriting the narrative of waste and emissions. In Kenya, the wheels of innovation are in motion, illuminating a promising route towards sustainability. And with every charge, individual lives are being profoundly impacted. Anne Masharia, Africa Matters, Nairobi.
A Nigerian environmental activist is cleaning the streets and public facilities in a city in a unique way. Jonathan Olanlokun dresses as Spider-Man as he cleans and moves refuse in Osogbo in southwestern Nigeria. His goal is to get the people and the government to take environmentalism seriously. Hilary Inoroka tells us the story.
Nigeria has its very own Spider-Man, but he neither spins webs nor scales buildings like the one in the movies. This Spider-Man cleans public places in Osogbo, a city in southwestern Nigeria. He does this at different locations every week, and today he's sweeping an open market.
I see developed nations, how they manage their waste, and I see how people throw waste out of their vehicles, how they throw their waste into the drainages. Then I see I can do something about this. And I started raising the campaign, telling people, don't drop this, do this.
Olanlokun started his environmental activism 19 years ago, but didn't become Spider-Man until 2021. The costume draws attention to him, giving him the opportunity to teach people about caring for the environment.
I like him. I like him a lot. I fell in love with his appearance as soon as I entered the market. At first, I felt these artists were here again, and I hoped there was no problem. But after listening to him, I felt he was one of us. I like all he did in this market.
The Nigerian Spider-Man is slowly getting more people to care for the environment. He tells me he's lost count of the number of people who now clean their neighborhoods regularly as a result of his advocacy. Sometimes, a few join in his market sanitation exercises.
Olanlokun raises awareness without the support of the government or private organizations. Activists say it's crucial that every Nigerian is active in protecting the environment.
That one nylon that you dropped could be the very one that would block that gutter, cause a flood, and that flood could kill maybe some little vulnerable innocent children. And you're the one that caused it.
Spider-Man has gained a loyal following and says he's determined to get everybody to do what he does and convince the government to implement policies that will protect the environment for future generations. Hilary Noroka, Africa Matters, Osogbo, Nigeria.
The world's largest floating book fair has just docked at Kenya's Mombasa port. MV Logos Hope, dubbed the floating library, will stay in port for 45 days, giving bookworms from across the region the chance to walk the gangplank and pick up a new read. Alexandria Majala has this report.
Music fills the air in Mombasa as locals and port officials await the arrival of MV Logos Hope at Mbaraki Wharf. Sailing under a Maltese flag, the vessel is carrying around 350 passengers from 65 different countries, many of them young volunteers. Dubbed the Floating Library, entry to the ship costs less than 50 US cents, a small price to pay to enter a whole new world of imagination.
One of the biggest impact that I've seen that this ship actually brings is the books that it carries. It carries books for all age groups. And also what we try to do is most of our books are actually affordable for almost everyone who comes on board. It's always happy for us to see someone leaving the ship carrying a book.
Once inside, visitors go through a short orientation and then they are free to explore the ship.
For 45 days, members of the public will be treated to the fun of exploring this expansive vessel, where they will explore amenities like the International Cafe, visitors deck, as well as waiting area. They will also have over 5,000 books from different genres to rifle through and purchase.
The well-stocked library features a wide array of genres, including science, sports, hobbies, language, faith, cookery, arts, medicine, as well as fiction. While this is the MV Logos Hope's maiden visit to Mombasa, its sister ship, the MV Doulos, made a stop here in 2005.
I can confidently say they sparked my interest in being a book lover, because that is how I started feeling like, oh, I can get much more than I'm getting. I actually have a library in my organization. I'm also a member of a book club. This is how much the single action of MV Doulos docking here impacted in my life, and it's going to be amplified much more with the Logos Hope right here, right now.
The coronavirus pandemic had a massive impact on the global movement of people, and many countries' tourism sectors took a severe knock. Kenya's was no different.
We are a cruise destination country, and across the boards in the country, from the national government to the county government, the port authorities have been encouraging and knocking doors across the world to promote the cruising hub and cruise liners to bring their ships to Mombasa. So in a way, this vessel is sending a message to the world that Mombasa or KPA facility remains a safe destination for such vessels to call in.
Owned by the German non-profit Good Books for All, MV Logos Hope has visited over 100 countries, bringing a whole world of stories with it. After its month and a half in Kenya, the ship plans to visit Tanzania and South Africa. Alexandria Majala, Africa Matters, Mombasa, Kenya.
The legacy of Portuguese colonialism in the southern African country of Mozambique can still be felt today. Its long journey to independence can be seen in various contexts, but a new perspective has gained international recognition. Bushra Gupta tells us more.
A Portuguese soldier and a Mozambican woman. It's a love story from colonial times. This depiction of historical romance has won an international prize for contemporary African photography. The artist Yasmin Forte says her photos highlight the country's colonial past through her family's history.
In this work, I tell a story about my father, a Portuguese soldier who came to Mozambique with his mom and dad, lived here many years and went to the army. That's why we have the picture of him in a military suit. He lived in town, and that's why we have the buildings on his face. My mom was born in Kwalamana, in a simple home made with clay, and later moved to a big house. So what I've tried to do is cross these stories to join them. I combined the past and the present.
Her award-winning work is titled "This is a Story About My Family" and addresses African identity, colonialism, and family. After independence in 1975, Yasmin's father stayed in the country despite the Liberation Party's order to leave after falling in love with her mother.
This is one of the places that appears in my work. It is where my father grew up and did his military training. They used to be in this square for the military parade, singing. This statue never used to be here though, but he was baptized in Mozambique and went to this church. It's also one of the places where I developed my work.
Contemporary End, an art platform that focuses on African perspectives, has given the award every year since 2012 to photographers whose works were created on the continent or engage with the African diaspora. Observers say Yasmin's photography was a clear standout.
I think she's a very interesting photographer, doing an excellent work portraying diverse aspects of Mozambican culture.
With a boost in international recognition from the prize, Yasmin hopes to see her work on show in bigger galleries around the world. Bushra Gupta, Africa Matters.
This week, we explore Keren, the second largest city in Eritrea. The old city was the site of key battles for the country, and despite its war-torn past, it preserves unique architectural structures from different colonial times. Let's take a closer look. And that's our show this week. Kindly share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode, or ideas on what you would like us to cover on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag #AfricaMatters. Feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle at @AdeshoaJosh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment, and please don't forget to share. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next week.